Get that planar punch in a much smaller shell. Hey there, this episode of Some Gadget Guy is brought to you by you. Yes, viewers like you, all of the amazing people sharing content across social media, and the generosity of my patrons over on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. More info on those amazing nerds later in the video. I am a nut for planar magnetic headphones and earbuds. The folks at Edifier sent these my way to test drive and review. These are the Edifier NeoBuds Planar. As you might have guessed already, these are true wireless earbuds that feature planar magnetic drivers. I've only become a fan of this kind of driver recently. I would say roughly 4 years ago is when I started testing that kind of audio tech more consistently. I don't want to get too bogged down in the science in this video. We can make noise in different ways. The kinds of earbuds most folks are familiar with use little dynamic drivers. They look like tiny little speaker cones. They function in a similar way to speakers, with a magnet and a diaphragm that moves air into your ear canal. I am grossly oversimplifying, but there are other ways to make something that will drive the audio you hear from a headphone. The other drivers, there are balanced armatures, electrostatic drivers, I've got cans with ribbon drivers, and my current favorite, the planar magnetic driver. Keeping this to the overly simplified explanation, the way a planar moves air, it's able to attack and recover very quickly. This gives planars a reputation for clarity and articulation that sounds different than a lot of our dynamic driver solutions. Some people love it, like me. Some people find the planar punch a little fatiguing. But what's exciting to me is this is a method of audio reproduction that is becoming a bit more mainstream. I worked in recording for over 20 years and was very familiar with studio monitors from Sony and Beyerdynamic and Sennheiser and Audio-Technica. Not too long ago, planars were a thing in my brain that were audiophile snake oil. They were often more expensive and more expensive to drive well, and the benefits seemed minimal to me. But then a handful of audio brands started breaking through this audiophile price barrier and delivering planars at prices that more directly competed with established premium dynamic driver options. I gave them an actual try in earnest a couple years ago, and I got hooked. They've been around for a while. I'm not breaking any news here, but they are still somewhat exotic for consumer solutions. Case in point, the manufacturer we're talking about today, I was very impressed by the performance of the Edifier Stax S5. I've been very anxious to try an Edifier planar earbud. The NeoBud casing and design looks almost identical to previous generations of NeoBuds. I don't love earbuds that have like stalks that stick off the edge, but at least there's a unique look to these, that angled blade coming down from the ear canal. All of our controls are squeezes. Thankfully, no more taps. We've got single, double, triple squeeze, and then a long squeeze. I would like to suggest to Edifier that with such a long edge, I would like to see them incorporate swipe gestures like OnePlus. We can squeeze for some controls, then swipe up and down for volume. I think that would be a nice control layout for a premium tier future earbud. Bluetooth 5.4 for the connection to your phone, and they might include the most complete list of codec support I've yet reviewed. A full complement of aptX codecs, including aptX Adaptive and aptX Lossless, plus LDAC, AAC, and LHDC5. You should have no issues connecting up to the highest quality playback possible from your phone, no matter if you're on a Qualcomm or a MediaTek or a Google Tensor chip. Now, Edifier claims up to 5 hours of playback with ANC on. I was a little short of that on my very first full charge with ANC on, and I was listening over LHDC and aptX Lossless. I got closer to 4.5 hours, which is still really good considering the audio quality and the different kind of drivers in these buds. And the case can deliver up to 15 hours of total playback with support for wireless charging. The design on these buds, they're a little deeper set than the Xiaomi or OnePlus buds I've reviewed recently. I think they lock in just a little bit better on my ears. And they're actually a little closer to the Pixel buds. I just wish they could get in even a bit deeper. I'd love these to dig in more like my NeuroBuds, because these drivers, 12mm planar magnetic drivers in an earbud, and I like them a lot. And we've talked about other premium tier earbuds, often something in the class of an AirPod Pro will have between a 10 or 11mm dynamic driver. So this lift, a 10 to 20% increase in surface area with a different kind of membrane, delivers a sonic quality that sets these apart. It's not necessarily a linear improvement, 20% better sound. They offer something a little different. I've said that, how much I appreciate competition in many of my earbud and headphone reviews, but I'm happy to add this point to a true wireless earbud review. As we start climbing above $100, quality does not scale linearly with price in the way that consumers think about quality. What we want to see are specific kinds of audio solutions for people that want to zero in on specific characteristics. An expensive earbud should not be a casual mega bass consumer all-rounder. As the prices scale up, we should specialize in the things you like to hear more specifically. That's why you might want to spend more money on a piece of audio kit. It's even better for what you want. Now, I've also mentioned this in previous Edifier reviews that I think Edifier gear can be a little finicky. I needed to mess with these a little to set them up and play with options, but I'm glad I did. You pull them out of the box and they're very good. You play with them a little and I think they become great. The stock tuning out of the box might be an issue for some folks. It was a little peaky on my ears. Planars can really ratchet up details in articulation, and you have to be careful with some tracks that get shrill or sibilant, especially aggressively mixed pop tracks. I have a headphone review playlist on Qobuz. I always keep those linked in my video descriptions, and I was especially worried about tracks like WTF by OK Go or Stoned at the Nail Salon by Lord, and I had good reason. Those highs get a bit toasty and just a little uncomfortable under the original tuning mode. They sizzle a little in that higher EQ where I am absolutely the most sensitive. As you're digging into the buds and you install that companion app, there are 3 included tuning modes: original, dynamic, and electrostatic. The dynamic tuning seems to lift up a bit more smiley face. The bass gets fatter, but the highs get even a touch more aggressive. Then the electrostatic seemed to be my jam. It actually felt like just a bit more of a low frequency roll-off. I can't say it was a significant difference in the highs, but just a general flattening. None of these presets feel especially neutral, but the electrostatic mode gave me more of those crunchy, articulated details on my test tracks. I can't quite put my thumb down on what exactly it is, but it almost feels like a slight bass roll-off and maybe like a different filter shape. But then there's a custom mode where you can make a couple different EQ options to really suit your tastes. At first, I was a little disappointed that in the Edifier app, it's a 4-band EQ, but there's a bit more you can get in and tweak. It's not preset for bands. You can change up the frequencies you're adjusting and then more granularly adjust frequency relative to bandwidth. I had to get really silly messing with those settings to hear specific differences at first, but they are really subtle. That's kind of the Edifier vibe I was talking about earlier. Depending on what you listen to and what you like, spending that time to dial in those settings, I think you're rewarded for those efforts. This is a great foundation to start. It's detailed and articulate. There's some good rumble though. I don't think I would put these up as basshead, skull rumbling buds. And either through your music app of choice or the Edifier companion app, you have a lot of room to tweak this sound. It's in that conversation. In terms of sound quality, it's been really tough to find comparison points that make sense. Planars in earbuds. I've used a couple options that were dual driver. I had an Sound neckband that paired a planar with a dynamic driver, and most recently, the Xiaomi buds also do this trick. There's a small planar with a dynamic driver. Both used the planar for mids and highs and a dynamic driver to flesh out the lows. The only earbud in my collection which solely uses a planar is my Odyssey Euclid, discontinued a while back, but originally sold for over $1,000 and uses a larger planar driver than what's in the Edifier. So it's not exactly an oranges to oranges comparison there. Now remember, it's not a linear improvement to quality. This isn't 3 times gooder sounding than this because it costs more than 3 times as much. It's an idea of a sound and presentation and clarity that I prefer, and this travels farther down that specific path. We're talking closed up little earbuds. So in things like soundstage, There's just more room for instruments and positioning on the more expensive planar. The Edifier will kind of squeeze tracks just a little bit more forward, but they perform better than a lot of our premium tier dynamic driver earbuds. I think the Odyssey are more evenly tuned, a little more natural. That extra driver surface area delivers more nuance, but this is endgame earbud pricing. This isn't the thing you just start with. If you haven't had any experience with planars and you decide you don't like this presentation, then it doesn't matter how much you spend. You should really only end up here after you've had a little experience and you understand what you're buying into. And that gets me back to sort of the original points I was making at the top of this video. It's why I'm so excited to see planars popping up more in the premium consumer space. It's one of the criticisms I levied at the Stax cans, that these are really pricey and they don't have active noise cancellation. So that potentially reduces the recommendation for someone who wants a great travel headphone, something you might want to use on an airplane, but it's a different kind of premium wireless experience for folks listening at home, or maybe you just want something really nice in the office. Thankfully, as earbuds, the NeoBuds include pretty decent noise canceling, something more in line with a nice sporty earbud, and it makes them more versatile. You can sit and listen and enjoy music as the primary activity, and they should be able to hang with you if you want to soundtrack a workout in a busy gym. It's not the most aggressive or isolating noise reduction, but it cuts way back on consistent noises in your environment. Obviously, incidental sounds will still cut through, but on my ears, they avoided that stuffy ear or overly isolated feeling. Other earbuds at this price might block out more noise, but I think Edifier is holding to a nice balance here where the sound quality is still the primary concern. Case in point, I'm sure a lot of development cash has gone into tuning this driver and including a complete collection of audio codecs, but we don't have some of the fun features like spatial audio or those background soundscape modes. We have in-ear detection, we have multi-point to connect to two devices, a low latency mode for gamers, so choices have been made. Where I miss spatial audio, I do kind of like turning that on for films, and especially when you compare it with head tracking, so you can link it to the audio source, look away from my tablet, and it kind of follows my head movements, but that's not what we get here. I've kind of digressed. Back to the NeoBuds, what I always find charming is when a brand has a vibe or a style. These deliver an experience I remember from reviewing the NeoBuds Pro, and with an audio representation I like a lot. They remind me from my previous review that I like gadget brands who aren't afraid to get a little messy. Edifier can put out some twitchy products that ask a little more of their audience. You know, a few more settings to play with, a few more adjustments to be made. Maybe you need to dig into that companion app. They're good out of the box, but they reward the folks who aren't afraid to look at the settings. That kind of experience I would probably call clumsy on a gadget brand or a phone brand earbud under $100. That's a product that should be kind of boring and just work. The person buying that isn't really looking for anything specific other than an audio solution that can replace the headphone jack that was cut out of their phone. But as prices climb, so should our expectations. We should expect a little more of the product and a little more of the consumer shopping higher up the food chain. These are not earbuds you just drop in your basket at checkout when you buy a new phone. People have to seek Edifier out as a brand. This purchase is automatically more active than most accessory purchases. This is a deliberate choice. It's a completely different solution aimed at a different kind of consumer, and in that space, it's really exciting competition. I still worry that true wireless cannot age as well as good cabled audio options. But if we're to respect true wireless as a replacement for cabled audio, then we need to see all the different options we have in cabled audio. A planar earbud is a great step in the right direction. And I'm very excited to see companies like Edifier continuing to walk down that path. Now, audio has always been my first love, my first passion. I love digging into new headphones and speakers and microphones and audio accessories. I worked in recording for decades, and the folks who get to see the results of my testing and reviewing first are, of course, my incredible patrons, all of the people over on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. This list of names scrolling by on your screen right now. A huge thank you from the bottom of my heart, as these people are helping to keep the lights on here in the Gadget Lab. They're basically the coolest tech pals in the universe. So I hope you'll check them out. I hope you'll consider joining the team over on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. Now, you know where you can find me across the rest of the internet at SomeGadgetGuy basically everywhere, but these days I'm spending a bit more time on the Mastodons, a little on the Blueskis, but a lot less so on the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Threads, and none at all on that dumpster fire site. And I will catch you all on the next review.